Hi, we are from Group 2. Before we explain the materials, let me introduce the members of this group. The first one is Mei Imade Agus Bangkat Anggara, and the second one is Ayu Putudiah Chandra Rasmi. The third one is Ketut Bayusari Utami. The fourth one is Nikadek Kerti Rahayu, and the last one is Made Dian Widyanyani Kunde.
Hello, I'm Madedian Widyanyani Kunde. Now I will explain about when I was a child, I spoke as a child. In this case, we will learn about how a child spoke when they were child. For example, when a couple are touring with their young child, the young child is calm cries. That is a natural wonder. Then, we will review developmental psycholinguistics, which examine how speech emerges over time and how children go about constructing the complex structures of their mother tongue. Based on Tennyson, first effort, a child is not words but cries. First material here is no language but cry. Crying is a kind of language without speech. In this initially is completely iconic. It is because crying helped the child learn how to produce linguistic sounds and precursor to speech. The first few weeks of child's life, crying is an automatic response to noxious stimuli. It means that the crying response is hard mixing into the child and crying is initially a spontaneous reaction. In other case, crying is a direct preparation for a lifetime of vocal communication. For example, like hungrier baby comes the louder and the longer the crying, while in the first month, child's development crying becomes more differentiated and more symbolic. It means that it is not directly related to the child's sense of discomfort, rather indirectly and associated with its needs. While after several weeks of extensive interaction with its caretaker, the child starts to making soft gargling sounds seemingly to express satisfaction. This cooing stage emerges at about 2 months of age, but it succeeded when the child is about 6 months old. By babbling stage, babbling refers to the natural tendency of children of this age to burst out in string of consonant vowel syllabus clusters, almost as a kind of vocalic play.
Hello everyone, I'm Diah Chandra Rasmi. Let's continue to hear our presentation. It's still about acquisitions. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. Well, for the next material is about first word. Around age 1, after crying, cooing, and babbling, children begin to produce their first word. These, of course, often do not sound much like adult words, but they bear some phonetic resemblance to them, and more important, they are sound consistently produced in associations with a particular meaning. The words children first to learn to say shows that they tend to be those which refer to prominent, everyday objects, and usually things that can be manipulated by the child, like mama, doggy, kitty, but also milk, cookie, and salt. At the age of 1, we suddenly recognize domestic harmony linking sense to sound and sight, and enter the sentient and symbolic world of human communication. The first few words are acquired. There is an exponential growth in vocabulary development, which only begins to taper at about the age of 6, when, by some estimates, the average child has a recognition vocabulary is about 14,000 words. There are 4 stages of Piaget cognitive development theory. It's involving a different aspect of language acquisitions. Sensory motor period, birth to 2 years. Children are born with action schemas to assimilate information about the world, such as sucking or grasping. During the sensory motor periods, children's language is egocentric, and they talk either for themselves or for the pleasures of associating anyone who happens to be there with the activity of the moment. Second, pre-operational periods, from 2 years to 7 years. Children's language make rapid progress, and the development of their mental schema lets them quickly accommodate new words and situations. Children's language becomes symbolic, allowing them to talk beyond the here and now, and to talk about things such as past, future, and feeling. Third, egocentrism involves animism, which refers to young children's tendency to consider everything, including inanimate objects, as being alive. Language is considered egocentric because they see things purely from their own perspective. Fourth, operational periods, 7 years to 11 years, and 11 years to adulthood. Piaget divided this period into 2 parts: the periods of concrete operations and the period of formal operations. Language at this stage reveals the movement of their thinking from immature to mature and illogical to logical. They are also able to decenter or view things from a perspective other than their own. It is at this point that children's language becomes socialized and includes things such as questions, answer, command, and criticism.
Hi, I'm Bangkit. In this video, I'm gonna talk about the birth of grammar. According to theory by Skinner in 1957, the man is a verbal operand which is under control by deprivation or oppressive stimulation in which characteristically produced appropriate reinforcement. It parallels the imperative mode of syntax and is manifested as command, demand, and so on. Simply stated, commands and requests occur because the speaker wants something and because in the past such utterances have caused someone else to supply what is demanded. Or it simply can be said that children seem to use single word as a sentence. This is the example by Charles Darwin in 1977 on his children. The children seems to use single word as a sentence. This is the example. The children say the word milk. It can be two possible meaning. It's question and exclamation. But the question it can be means that do you have milk? They asking. And the second one is it can be exclamation. I want milk. The second theory is the theory by Chomsky in early 1960. The theory was about the transformational generative grammar. Transformational generative grammar is the structure of a sentence in a language. This theory tells us about how syntax is formed and learned. And every researcher have investigating child first language acquisition. And the reason why the researchers investigating child first language acquisition are inclined to focus on attempts of children to acquire grammar is that the data is easy to obtain. One of the examples of this investigation is the project by Chomsky. Chomsky did a project which attempted to improve upon previous attempts to teach a form of human sign language or American Sign Language or ASL to young chimpanzees. The result was, even in this sparse amount of data, there are obvious differences in performance. The child displays good lexical diversity. The chimp seems confined to a small stock of words. The child displays very little repetition. The chimp seems to find it impossible to sign a single sentence without referring to either name or banana. Or it simply can be said that human child has better structured word praise rather than the chimp. Even human child has only can say two word phrases, but the chimp can have four word phrases. Human child they can produce two word phrases like it ball, it doll, it checker, it daddy, it boy. They only can produce two word, but the chimp they can four word phrases. They can produce four word phrases. It is like it drink, it drink. It has four word phrases. And the other example is banana name, banana name. It name, it name. But even the chimp has more phrases that they can produce rather than the human child, but human child has better structure than the chimp.
Hello, I'm Kerti Rahayu. Now I will continue the explanation. It is about evidence for inattenance. Pavlov in 1897 proposed a behaviorism approach. He believed that the acquisition of human language is influenced by external environment. This theory emphasized on the stimulus response and giving reinforcement to the children. Here, I will give you an example that related with the theory above, where two different species, which chimp and human child, that are treated in different ways or surroundings. Human children receive an enormous amount of linguistic input on any given day. They are infrequently rewarded just for speaking up and sometimes encouraged to be seen, not to be heard. While chimp is constantly bombarded with signs and was continually rewarded and reinforced whenever he tried to use it to communicate with his handlers. In here, based on behaviorism theory above, we might expect that the chimp to be better performer. On the other hand, as the development of the theory, most psycholinguists believe that acquisition of human language is not only based on external environment, but also influenced by other factors. As what Noam Chomsky's inner test theory proposes, that children have an inborn or innate faculty of language acquisition that is biologically determined. He also determined that being biologically prepared to acquire language regardless of setting is due to the child's language acquisition deficit or LAD, which is used as a mechanism for working out the rules of language. Chomsky believed that all human languages share common principles, such as all languages have verbs and nouns. And it was the child's task to establish how the specific language she or he hears expresses these underlying principles. For example, the LAD already contains the concept of verb tense, and so by listening to word forms such as worked or played, then the child will form a hypothesis that the past tense of verb are formed by adding the sound the, or it to the base form. The way how the children acquiring language will be different with how the children learn other skills, such as swimming and playing piano. It is because children don't have their brain genetically programmed to help them swim or play a tune on the piano.
Hello, I'm Baisari as the last speaker. I will continue the presentation about childish creativity. Child language acquisition is relatively independent from environmental influences, despite the distinct control that the latter exercise on the course of our first language development. According Linden 2007, proposed that human species that develop a brain whose neural circuit contains linguistic natural predisposition to learn language is triggered by hearing speech. Then, children will be able to interpret what they hear according to the underlying principle or structure it already contains. For example, daughter. Somebody's at the door. Mother. There is nobody at the door. Daughter. There's yes body at the door. Daughter produce all kinds of expression like this, which they have never or rarely heard in their environment, but which they create on their own in their attempts to construct or reconstruct their mother tongue.